Colby, math.com.
If all went according to plan on the first day of this project in math class, we started to look at this, the idea of creating a budget, and hopefully did quite a bit of it in class, but I'm creating this video so that you can finish the example budget on your own and then print a copy, and I'll show you how to do all of that on this video. And then the assignment for tonight is to get that printout and bring it to me with your name on it tomorrow. So I used this, I didn't want to do my example budget using an idea that was too close to volcanoes or related to volcanoes really in any way, because I didn't want to sort of guide your thinking on the volcanoes. I want you to work with your partner to come up with those ideas on your own. But when I was trying to think of a project of similar scale that might be interesting to you, I remembered that I saw a podcast on this Dutch inventor named Boyan Slat, who created, you can read all about it here. We probably looked at this in class, where he created a system to clean up the oceans, the plastic in the oceans, by deploying these huge floating, stationary but floating vessels called interceptors, with which let the ocean's currents guide the plastic into the interceptor. And there's a whole system for then reclaiming that plastic and cleaning it up. So there's a lot of interesting things here about his project that you can read. And we saw a video in class where these ideas are beginning to be deployed on the rivers. There are the 1,000 rivers in the world that contribute to the 80% of the plastic pollution in the ocean. So I was using the idea of creating an example budget by imagining creating one of these setups on the Caloosahatchee River in Florida. And so we'll create the example budget using that idea. The first thing you want to do is go to, and I don't use these online applications often. I prefer to use the standalone desktop versions, the local versions, because they have more features. However, there's the obvious advantage if you're working with a partner, you can collaborate using the online version. So I taught myself a lot of this as I went, and so you'll have the step-by-step, approach to this if you haven't created anything in Excel before, Excel Online. So you all have your OneDrive. You go to Excel, and it will just choose a blank workbook. The online version will automatically save it, but the name will have no meaning. So let's change this to, let's just call this budget example, and I'll just put Colby, so you know it's the budget example using the example that I've given you, not your own example. And then I think if I hit enter, that will save that. I'm going to show you how to insert cells, use functions in cells, and by using functions that it lets you, as you refine your data, you get new data, or you change some data, all of those changes will be reflected in the overall numbers. I think the first thing we should do is to create, let's see, I think I'll work a little bit backwards here. I know I'm going to want to have expenses and income, and so I'll just start with expenses, and we'll have several columns of data. Description will be, so go down to A5 and type description, hit enter, and then right next to that we'll type date, and next to that amount, and then quantity, total, and then balance. And I'll explain what all of these are as we go. And I know that the column widths are not perfect yet. Description, the whole word isn't even showing. I'll show you how to do all that. But first, let's copy all of those because we're going to have expenses and we're going to have income. So I'm going to skip a cell. I'm going to go over to H and just paste all of that. And all of these, all of the expenses, all the things we have to pay money for the project will be on the left side, and all the money we make will be on the right side. And so I'm going to take all of these cells above from A through F, from A3 to F3, and I'm going to use this function merge and center. So click on merge and center, and then that lets me give this a title. These will be all of our expenses for the project. And then we'll do the same thing from H3 to M3, merge and center, and give these items the title income. Now, I purposely left row 1 blank because it occurred to me that might be a nice place for you to put your project idea. So I'll merge and center and make one big cell there, and I'm going to call this Calusa, I hope I spelled this right, Caloosahatchee River, Caloosahatchee River Interceptor Project. Okay, now when you do yours, the idea behind what I'm trying to do here with you is show you how to create a spreadsheet for a budget, including some graphics, and then print it. And then that way you'll have an example that you can use to guide you when you create your own budget for your volcano project. But your volcano project name would go here. And since that's pretty important, let's bold it. Maybe pick a font that we like, a color. No, that's not. Let's go like that either. And then make it bolder, bigger. Okay, so that gives it a nice title. We can also do that with expenses and income. We could actually take this whole row and just say, want this font a bit bigger, maybe 20, and then bold, and you pick whatever font you want, but that's the idea, to show that we've got these categories. And I probably, well, I'll save some of this other formatting for later, but one thing I know for sure is the description is going to have to be a lot longer than I have room for there. And same on this side. The date, that's probably reasonable. Quantity doesn't need to be that long. One thing you can do when you click on up here to resize a column, if you double click, it will automatically click to the space that fits things well. Like if I do this on total, you see how it shortens that column. But we'll have to adjust those again once we actually get dollar amounts in there, because that might not be, the current width might not be long enough. And some of these you might want center aligned. We'll deal with all that later. But I just want to start putting in some different expenses and income to show you how you could do that. So I spent a day sort of going through, if I was actually doing this project, what would I need? And this, if I was actually doing a project on this scale, first of all, it wouldn't be just me, it would be a team of people, and we would probably have weeks or months to create what I'm going to create here in just this one video. But so a lot of this is sort of made up, things I found online that seem somewhat reasonable, but it's just the very beginning starting amounts. There's not much realism to this, but just to give you an idea, we need probably a floating platform, and I found that would cost about $3,500. We need one of them, and then here's where we can start to use the power of Excel. So some of these different expenses, there might be more than one. For example, I've got like a barrier system where I need to buy five items, and I'll show you that. So you would multiply the amount you're going to pay by how many you're buying. And so when we get in this total column for E6, we go up here and we press equals. That tells Excel that it's a function. And then we select the amount cell, which is C6. and then you do the Shift 8, which gives you this is a multiplication symbol in coding language. You wouldn't do X. That wouldn't mean multiply. You would do Shift 8 to get that symbol, and then you would multiply it by the quantity. We only need one of those floating platforms, and then when you hit Enter, it will do the calculation for you. 3,500 multiplied by 1 is 3,500. Let's put in the rest of these. Before I put in the rest of these expenses, one thing you can do is for every line that has a different expense, I'm going to want to take the amount and multiply it by the quantity. So I can take that function that we just wrote, and you see this little square here. You can click on it and now drag it down, and it copies that function into all of these cells below. So we'll get the total for each item as we input the expenses. The next one is a turbidity curtain. Turbidity curtain barrier, which is basically the floating barrier that all the plastic at the surface hits and gets swept into the interceptor. And I actually found something that looked pretty reasonable to me, like it could actually be used for this purpose. But they sell it in 50-foot sections. So the turbidity curtain for every 50 feet cost $545. And we would need about, I have no idea what we would need, but I'm just saying we would need about 250 feet. So I need a quantity of 5 of those. And you'll see when I hit Enter, it does the multiplication for me because we already input that function. I realized after I made this entire video that it would have been a good idea to show you how to insert a comment at this point also. So that turbidity curtain that I mentioned, the $545 price, I'm going to go back to where I found it. And show you how to insert. This has got to be it. So you find a website with a price like this. It looks like the price went up since since I checked on this a day ago. But anyway, that's why we have the Excel spreadsheet. So now it's $721.90 per 50 feet if you buy 5 or more. And so basically what I want to show you is I'm going to Control C. I'm going to copy this URL, and then I'm going to insert a comment. New comment right there, and I'm going to place Control V, so paste that URL for the turbidity curtain. Turbidity curtain price. And that way, and I just realized something else. It tells me the cell that the comment is attached to, so that if I wanted to figure out, well, where did I get that price? I wanted to go back. I could go back to that URL from my comment because I pasted the URL in the comment. But since I noticed that the price went up, let's just change that also. $721.90. Unfortunately, we're paying more. But that's the power of Excel, is that I can change this to $721.90. And not only will the balance and everything change, but all of these will change, and they'll be reflected on the graphics below. Everything will get updated all at once. Okay, so that's how you can insert a comment to put a URL to remember where you got the where you found that pricing. The next expense will be a conveyor belt system. Which I spent a lot of time trying to find a reasonable amount for this, and I really don't know if this is reasonable, but let's just go with it. $4,960. I found one for that amount. A motor with solar panels, because if the interceptor is stationary, it's not like a vessel that needs to move around, but you do need to have some power on the interceptor to move that as a plastic hits a conveyor belt. You need to move the conveyor belt up into the hopper to dump into the dumpster. So motor and solar panels, I figured would cost about $2,500. Need one of those. A dumpster to dump the plastic into for retrieval would cost, let's see, I found one for $1,343, and I figure I need two of those because as one is being moved out to get recycled, the other, you would need to put one in its place. And then we would want to have a website and a social media presence. And so there'd be a monthly fee for the website, which I estimated would be about $26.95. And all of these, I'm doing all these expenses and income. This whole budget is based on an annual budget, and so I'm going to say I would need to pay that for 12 months. Next, I just came up with an idea of, you'll see when we do income, some of our income, quite a bit of it actually is based on a social media campaign and a GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign to raise money, especially since this is the type of a project with a lot of people would want to contribute money to help towards this cause of cleaning up plastic. So one of the things we're going to give back to the contributors, it would be promotional T-shirts for the project. But of course, we need to have those made and ship them out and everything. So I'm figuring $12 per T-shirt, and we'd probably need about 1,000 T-shirts. Okay, and then you see, as soon as I input that amount, that quantity, the amount was too big for the column, and so this is where we could go up to this point right here and double click, and it will resize the column. I'm also at the end of my expenses. I mean, this is admittedly a very simplistic example. You would have rows and rows and rows of expenses, maybe even different sheets for different expenses. But for the sake of just creating a budget and seeing how this works, we're going to stop there. And just know when I dragged that function down and we have all these cells that we don't need, all we have to do is highlight them and just delete them. If we need them back later, we can copy from here. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, I think quantity should be center aligned. So I'm going to just tell, oops, that's probably not what I wanted. I probably want to be more specific here and tell it to center align these things. The amounts, I feel like I should be able to do this from here. That way, if I get more amounts, yeah, I think I'm going to change this right here. So we want, since these are all money, you see where you've got different things you can choose here. I'm going to choose English dollars or American money, and I want to just make this a little bit bigger so that dollar sign is not running into the first digit so much. That would also be the reasonable format for the total, since the total is also in dollars. So let's do that here. And the date, if you knew the date that you purchased, like let's say we actually purchased the floating platform on the 3rd of December, we put in 12/3/2019, and Excel seems to know that that's a date, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go up here to format and choose short date, and that didn't change anything, but that's because, like I said, I think it already knew that that was a date. Okay, balance will be the total amount that you spent so far. So for this first cell, F6, the balance is going to be equal to just this amount, the total for the floating platform, because that's all we purchased so far. And you can see we need to resize that. But then we go to F7, that's going to be equal to the previous balance from this cell plus this new total amount from this new item that we purchased. And then if I take that cell and I, again, see the little square, if you drag that down, that will give you a running total for the whole project as far as expenses go. In other words, if I buy one floating platform, I spent $3,500. Then I bought five 50-foot sections of this curtain, so another $2,700. That seems reasonable. Just like using, if you use an Excel spreadsheet, you should treat it just like using a calculator. Don't assume it's doing it right. Don't assume your functions have no errors. Do estimates like we do in math class all the time to make sure your answers seem reasonable. If I add this amount to this amount, $6,200 seems reasonable. Then if I add about another $5,000 to $6,200, $11,200 seems reasonable. So it looks like my function is working as intended. I get this big expense of $12,000 from all those promotional t-shirts at the end, which takes me from about $17,000 to $29,000, which, that's exactly what you would expect. So it looks like everything is working as I would expect it to, and so I feel okay about that. And now we're going to start inputting some income. I'm pretending we had a GoFundMe campaign, an initial campaign. When that Dutch inventor actually did his project, he raised over $2 million in 100 days, and I believe I saw on one website when I was looking at this that was the biggest raise ever for GoFundMe. So we could assume that we could actually, even if it was something local, trying to clean up the Caloosahatchee River, you could expect there would be some interest in actually helping with that. Let's just make up a date, 11/25. And I'm going to make sure that that's formatted correctly. The amount from the GoFundMe, my fictional GoFundMe campaign, I'm saying $8,500. We're going to format this as money, and we did it once, and so the total would be, we're making a function, it would equal the amount multiplied, so shift 8, by the quantity. And it seems to know that that's dollars, or maybe I already did it, but I'm just making sure. I can resize those later, but let's put in all the different fictional income sources that I looked up what you could expect to sell salvaged recyclable plastic, and I was shocked that I saw a price of 15 cents a pound. That's a lot more money than I would have thought for that, but let's just go with that. Salvage materials resale per pound. Found 15 cents. So 15 hundredths of a dollar. Now the quantity would be how many pounds would we recover in a year? And here's where these projects get extremely difficult, especially if you have perfectionist tendencies. We're imagining this project, just like you'll be imagining your volcano project. You have to base it on something, but it's going to be a wild guess, but a wild guess based on something. And so here's what I based this wild guess on. When I went through that river video for the interceptor project in rivers, they claimed that 1,000 kilograms could be recovered per day. Actually, no. They claimed 100,000 kilograms of material would be recovered per day. Okay, so the number of pounds that we're going to put in as our quantity, as our yearly total number of pounds of salvageable, resellable material, has to be based on something. And in the river video for the interceptor, they claim that they're going to be able to salvage 100,000 kilograms of material per day. Now, that's with their super high-tech tested interceptor system, and ours is just sort of like a a much lower version that we throw together and give it a shot. And so I'm saying, I'm starting out with just saying, okay, let's just say we get 1/100th of what they're claiming to get, and we only recover 1,000 kilograms per day. And then to make it even more reasonable, I'm imagining only 1/10 of that is salvageable and resellable. And so we're going to base our total number of pounds on a 100 kilogram per day, or 1/10 of that 1,000. 100 kilograms per day is about 220 pounds per day, and 220 pounds multiplied by 365 days in a year would be 80,300. 80,300. I was tempted to grab a calculator, but Excel is a calculator, so let me just double check my, first I have to tell it I'm doing a calculation here, equals 220 pounds per day multiplied by, remember that shift 8 is multiply 365. Yep, that's the right amount, 80,300. Now just delete that. Now here's where you can use the comments function. This is the type of number that if I were on the Shark panel, that would immediately catch my eye, and I would ask, what are you basing that number on? And so you want to select that cell, right click on it, and see where it says new comment. You want to click on that, and you want to remind yourself, put a comment. Total 80,300 total pounds. Estimate is based on 1/100th of the, I'll say, Dutch Interceptor River project stated total of 100,000 kilograms of material per day. Then assume 1/10 of our 1,000 kilogram per day estimate is salvageable and resellable. And it's got a post button because the idea is you would then be communicating that to your team or anyone who clicked on that comment. Right now I have no team because I forgot to show you how to share this, but we'll do that coming up before this thing's over. But if I post it, then when I'm on the cell, and I can click on that and see the comment, but when I close out the comments, then all it shows up as is this little symbol reminding me that there's a comment for that amount, and that could be extremely important to remember how you came up with that number. I also don't like, now that we've got quantities in the tens of thousands, I don't like our format for this number. So I'll show you how to format this. You go to number, and then maybe I'm supposed to, more number formats. Go to more number formats down here, and we'll select number. I don't really need any decimal places, but I do want the thousands separator, the comma to separate that place value, and that looks more like we would want 80,300 to look. Okay, I'll just do it this way. I'll center them, and I feel like these need to be a little bit bigger to match over here. Okay, so that was a weird one because we had, a huge number of pounds, but I wanted to see how to handle something like that. Now, I forgot when I created this total that I wanted to copy this function down. And so then you'll see that even though we're only getting 15 cents a pound, it adds up to over $12,000 over the course of the year. Okay, the next income source would be from the birdhouse idea that I shared in class. So imagine we had another GoFundMe campaign, like a second campaign based on the birdhouses. We see now that we need a little bit more room here. And we're assuming we have volunteers that would create those birdhouses for us, part of the people that are on the team. And then we would get $10, or let's just say, to make them sound more reasonably priced, $9.95 per birdhouse. And we sold, or imagine that we would sell 2,500. So that total would be pretty substantial, 24,000. And then we also talked about having sponsors, corporations that maybe we would print their name on the turbidity curtain or on the interceptor itself. So imagine we have 3 sponsors for this project. Sponsor 1, sponsor 2, and sponsor 3. Sponsor 1 donated 5,000. Sponsor 2, 2,500, and sponsor 3, 2,500. And one of each of those sponsors. We can create a balance for our income sources. That's all of our income sources, so I'm also going to delete this. The balance would be, for the first one, would just equal this total. For the second one, it would equal the previous balance plus this total from this new income source. And then we would copy that function down to reflect the rest of the income sources. And so we have all of our expenses itemized and all of our income itemized. The next thing we need is going to, let's see, I'm going to merge a couple of these cells and have one overall total expenses. And here I'll make this equal to the balance at the end of our expenses, because that is our total expenses. And over here I'm going to merge these 3 cells, and I'm going to say total income. And right next to that I'll create a function which just copies the value in this cell, because that balance amount is our total income. Then I'll merge these 3 cells and call this balance. Forgot to merge them, but I think I can do it after I write this. I can. And then the balance will be the total income minus the total expenses. So when I create this function, I do equals, and then I press on the total income, that cell, minus the total expenses. And that tells us we would have for that year, we'd have a total amount of income or profit of 26,725. Now that could be negative if the expenses were greater than the income. And actually, in most real situations, you would expect it to be negative for several years before you start to earn a profit. And just to show you that that's true, let me imagine that we bought 10,000 t-shirts and show you how everything would change. All of a sudden, I'm spending $136,000 on t-shirts. My expenses are way higher than my income, and a negative balance is reflected in parentheses like this. On a spreadsheet, all the negative amounts would be in parentheses. I wonder if that just happens naturally if you do like -2. No, it doesn't, but it knows if it's a dollar amount and it's negative, it should be in parentheses. And so that would be a loss of 81,000. Of course, we're not going to buy 10,000 t-shirts. We're only going to buy 1,000. So you see how when you can make one change and everything updates. That's the power of using those functions. I think the thing to do now would be to start to give this a little bit more, a little bit better formatting. For example, all of these would probably be bold, maybe even slightly higher font. So I'm bolding these, increasing the font a couple steps for each of those. I'm thinking about whether I want, like, I kind of want that date center aligned. Although with the merge cells, I never quite know how that's going to work. So I'll just tell it center align the dates. The amounts, I like having the word amount centered, but the amounts themselves I think are better. The amounts themselves I think are better right aligned like this. Quantity is fine, except now that I've got to make it a little bit bigger to fit that word better. Total, I just want the word centered, but the amounts either centered or right aligned if they're dollar amounts. Description is better on the left. Center this, center this, center these, right align these. Oh, those are already centered. Right align these, center these. And then, are we okay with the widths? Make that a little wider. All right, that all looks good. You can also, you've got control over some borders. So give that a border, which didn't show up. So what did I do wrong? Maybe I just didn't. You have to select it, and then, you know what would actually be good? Insert a row here. Maybe even insert a, I don't want to insert a column. I don't like what that's going to do. Okay, so there's a border. We can give this, I just want to, actually what I want to do first is, let's make sure we've got these kind of borders to make sure those all look like individual cells. Do that over here. Probably don't need this row. Could probably delete this row. And then give this an underline border like this. But I want to make it thicker. Yeah, it doesn't give me as much control as the offline version would, but it's working. It'll work. You also probably want to color code expenses. I would like something red. This will change the font color, which you might want to do, but I'm just going to change the background color. I want something reddish, but I noticed when I tried doing this before I made the video that I don't have a lot of choices here like I would expect, so that's another little drawback of the online version, but I'm just going to choose, this is reddish, it's orange, so I'm going to choose that one. For expenses and for income, something green, shaded somewhat green, like that. I'm going to give that color for income to these cells also, and have the expenses match this other color that we chose. Balance, I'll give a totally different color, maybe like a blue. And then all of these need to be bigger, so maybe like that, bold it, and then I'll have to adjust this a bit. This one's fine because this is already so wide, but the balance will need to fit that a little bit better. Okay. I I think that looks pretty good. Now, well, I also want to create some graphics for expenses and income to show you how to do that. Now, one thing that I spent a lot of time on when I was trying to figure out how to do this using Excel online is realizing there's something I can't do online, so I'll show you what I mean. I really wanted to create a chart using these cells and the total amounts, which on any Excel program that's not online, you just hit Control and then you select all the cells. But after doing a lot of digging on some blogs, I found that ever since 2015, people have been asking for this feature on Excel Online where you can select non-adjacent cells using Control, and it's never been added. So that's probably some sort of copyright law issue with the online version, because otherwise I can't imagine they wouldn't have added that by now. But we can do something called a workaround. Sometimes people call it a hack. And it worked fine when I figured out this way to do it. If you just take these cells and copy them, so I'm doing Control C, but you could also just say copy from there. Bring them down here and paste them. I usually just use Control V, so I'm not sure which version of paste I should use here, but I'm sure that works fine. And then take the totals also, copy them, and paste them down here. And then you get this, you get these errors because of the functions, but I wanted to copy them so I'd have the same formatting, but at this point I'm going to click on each one, and just for example for the for B16 I'm going to say equals this amount, enter. For this one I'm going to say it equals this amount, enter. Just do that for each one. This one equals this amount, this cell. This one equals this cell. This one equals this cell. And this one equals this cell. And the reason you want to do that is because now they're adjacent. So I can select all of these at once and then insert a bar graph. Just choose this first one, clustered bar, and it gives me this graphic that shows all of the different expenses. It's strange how it almost looks like they're choosing them from the most expensive to the least expensive, except you see that it doesn't do that at the very end. Like the floating platform is a bit more expensive than that 250 feet of turbidity curtain, but for whatever reason, I don't know the logic behind how they order these. But in any case, you get a side-by-side comparison of what's costing the most, which is a nice graphic, and that's what a bar chart is for. A bar graph is for, to compare items and categories. But you see that there's a lot of things here that make it hard to read, and so we can improve on this by going up to where it says axes, primary horizontal axis, that x-axis. We want to just say none for that, which now I have no scale at all, but we'll fix that in a minute. And then here where it says series 1, I believe that's the legend. We'll just select none for that. And data labels is what we want. If we say inside end, that will give us the amount printed right on the bar, which is probably preferable. You can sort of see, you can see that the t-shirts are costing a lot more than the, how could the website monthly charges be $16,000? That makes no sense. Okay, this is what I mean about checking whether things seem reasonable. I just now noticed a mistake I made. So I knew the website can't cost $16,000. The website, even for the whole year, is only $323. So I grabbed the wrong amounts. I didn't want the balance, I wanted the total. And I may have even started doing that. So let's go back to these cells and check what's going on here. E6 is correct. E7 is correct. F8. See, I started pulling from the wrong column. And maybe you noticed that. And if you did, good for you. That's I'm not even gonna edit this out. I'm just gonna leave this mistake in here to show you the kind of things you might run into. The next one should be the 2500. The next one should be the dumpster 26,000 from E10. And I want you to watch the website monthly. So watch this bar. When I fix this cell to equal this total, you see that bar goes way down, as it should. So this graphic, this bar chart, all of the changes are reflected that are reflected in any entry will be reflected in the chart, in all the totals and the balance. The promotional t-shirts should actually be equal to this total. And I see that now says 12,000 as it should, 323. Okay, these all look like the totals for the different itemized expenses. And now you wouldn't really want to have this duplicated information here. We did it as a workaround to be able to create this bar chart, but one nice thing is you can just cover it up now. You can just place your bar chart right on top of that, so it won't even show up when we print it. I just remembered one other thing we want on this chart. We want a title. So chart title, above the chart, these are our expenses. Okay, we're gonna make one for income also. So let me copy these down to here and copy the totals, even though we know we're gonna need to input them. This equals this total. This cell 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 equals this total for sponsor 2. Okay, and then I really don't need to resize this because we're just doing this as the input for the bar chart. But now that I've selected them all and they're all adjacent, bar chart, and I'm gonna put it on top of that. I'm gonna just make the changes that we made before. No horizontal axis, no legend, but we do want the data labels, the inside end, and we do want a chart title above the chart, which reminds us that this is our income. And let's see, I think that's it. Okay, so we've got our project title, our expenses, our income, our total expenses, total income, and all of these will change as we change data on this chart. If you need to, as you get more items, if you need to add more lines, you just do insert row, and everything will shift down. Insert another row, everything will shift down, and you can put extra, extra expenses, extra income. Anytime you do something you want to undo, you've got the undo function, or you could just delete those rows. Now, there's a couple last things. In order to complete this as an assignment, just so I can make sure that you can create one of these and know how to print it, we're going to print it next, but you wouldn't normally, like on your project, you wouldn't have this cell, but let's just do a merchant center somewhere over here where there's some space and put your name. That way when you print it, I'll know whose paper I'm looking at. To print it, you don't have to worry about saving it. It's constantly saving it for you in your 365. But if I go print, show print friendly view, you can see how this is laid out in more of a landscape. And so I'm going to say landscape. The active sheet, the current sheet we're on, you'll probably only have one sheet anyway. But then here's the important thing. You want to go to scaling. Fit sheet on one page. And then click print. I'm printing to the J building first floor, but you would be printing to your printer or the library printer. and you should get a printout that looks like this. I printed mine out before I started making this video so you can see that it works. But you turn in tomorrow, you turn in a printout like this with your name on it, so I can see that you can do that. The other thing you want to do, and really the first thing I should have done, is to share this. So if you're working with a partner, you're obviously going to share with your partner, but I want you to share it with me, this example one, and I also want you to share your actual budget with me once you start creating it. But the way you do that is you go up where it says share, and then you click, you start putting in, like to share it with me, CCOL, and then you see there's my name. So you click on that and share it, and hit send, and that will share it with me. I'm not going to share it with myself because I don't know what that will do, but you see how to do that. So share it with me, print it, and bring it to class tomorrow. If you run into trouble, at least if you shared it with me, I can see what the trouble was, and that way I can know how to help you next with the next step. And this should give us a good start on creating your actual project budget when you start doing that next week with your partner. Okay, thanks for watching the video.